This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
It is a busy week. It is a crazy week. And hopefully for Patriots fans, it is a fantastic week. Yes, we have reached draft week. And before we get into this, I want to remind everybody this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. And do us a favor. If you like what we do, and if you're listening or watching, I would hope you like what we do unless you hate watch us. Go over to Prize Picks and sign up using the code CLNS. It would help us tremendously. All right. So, Greg, there's a lot to sift through, a lot of rumors over the past 24 hours. I want to start with Diana Russini and Chad Graff over at The Athletic because this became the story yesterday. Diana began her day by tweeting out that Jonathan Kraft is heavily involved with the decision-making when it comes to the third pick. She said that Elliott Wolf was running point, but Kraft was heavily involved. Tom Curran, Phil Perry last night on Early Edition, NBC Sports Boston came out and they said, well, Kraft is that they want to be in the loop. They want to be in the loop, but they're not necessarily heavily involved. They would define heavily involved differently. My first question to you is, how would you define heavily involved if you're talking ownership with a pick like this, Greg?
So I would describe heavily involved as, from what I understand, what they're doing, that ownership. And I don't know if Robert is in town. He might be in Palm Beach, but at least, Jonathan is his in his stead. But this is about right around here, the weekend before the draft, early in the week through the draft. This is when ownership gets involved, when they get to that small, we talked about it last week, that small decision-making group, and that will, on almost every team, that will involve ownership. And to me, it's not being heavily involved, it's just being regularly involved. Now, do I think, would you say it's heavy, they're heavier, more heavily involved than they were at this stage under Bill Belichick than Gerard Mayo? Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say. I think it's all relative, whether they're quote unquote heavily involved. I do think that they are more involved than they have been, which is natural since Bill Belichick isn't here and he made all the decisions, and ultimately made his own decisions on a lot of things, kept his own counsel. But I do think that ownership, especially Jonathan Kraft, I do think he's more involved. But, a lot of people want to use this as like the big bad wolf. Like Jonathan's the big bad wolf.
Yeah.
In this thing, and he's just waiting to pounce, and he's going to be like, from what I understand, it's not that. He's just, Bill's gone. You have Gerard Mayo, who hasn't been through this. Elliott Wolf, who, hasn't been through it in this role. Somebody's got to somewhat supervise what's going on. And so I don't think it's anything to be alarmed about. To me, it's mostly natural.
To me, it comes down to the final call. That's what I want to know. I expect ownership to be involved. It's the third pick in the draft. This is a monumental decision. If you stick and pick and you pick a quarterback, I would imagine that ownership is going to have some thoughts on that quarterback. But who makes the final call? And I think that's the only thing Patriots fans care about. And it's really the only thing they should care about. Is it the football people making the football decisions? From what you understand, Greg, that is still the case from the latest you've heard.
Yes, I think that from what I understand, Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo are, and I think it's going to be revealed like once we get to after the draft, maybe after the first round, when we hear from, I expect we're going to hear from Wolf and Mayo that night at the facility. I wouldn't be surprised if they came out and they said, we knew what we were doing about 2 weeks ago. That they had come to a consensus that basically it came down to Wolf and Mayo agreeing on who they would pick depending on what happens at number 2 with Washington. Elliott sort of hinted at this in his press conference, but I think that those two guys are involved, and ownership just wants ownership similar to when Bill was here. They just want to hear their reasoning. They want to make sure it's sound. They want to ask some questions to make sure that the reasoning is sound on the pick and that why this is in the best interest of the team. But I don't think they're going to heavily weigh in on, I really like Drake Maye. I think he's, bigger, all that. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, look, if ownership has the final say and they're not allowing the football people to make the football decisions, it's a disaster. And I have said that. I will stand by that. There are really no examples of a team being run by its owner with the ownership making these football decisions that has really, created any kind of success. We saw what happened with Jerry Jones versus Jimmy Johnson. That thing blew up in Jerry's face. So if they're making decisions, that's a disaster. If they're involved, again, I'm fine with it. They write the checks. They should be involved. They should have a voice at the table, just not the deciding voice. Under any circumstances, Greg, could you see a front office versus ownership standoff about what to do at 3?
No, absolutely not. That's not going to happen. They're not idiots. Just like you said, you're basically setting up the organization for failure when that happens. No, I do think at the end of the day, the Krafts will be at arm's length and they will let their football people make the decision.
Thank God if that's what happens, because that's what should happen. How difficult, or maybe it's not difficult at all, is the job that Elliott Wolf has to do not only this week, but of course, especially on Thursday and during the draft with his contract status? Because I could easily push back and say, all right, well, ownership doesn't make the final decision. They're not giving the power to the football. They might be giving the power, quote unquote, to the football people. But Greg, we have a lame duck as the de facto GM, and inherently, isn't there some pressure for Elliott to wink, wink, nudge, nudge, agree with ownership when they might suggest something?
In theory, I understand the point. I just think when it comes down to both of these people that are primarily going to make the decision on the pick, Wolf and Mayo, you are talking about two people that that are supremely confident in what they do. Now, in the case of Jerod Mayo, could it be a little bit false bravado in that he doesn't really know? He's never been in this position, hasn't even been close to this position. So does he really understand? You could say that. But I do think when it comes to Elliott Wolf, this is a guy who basically has been dreaming of this spot probably since he was about 4 or 5 years old. That he has been bred for this. He has been through it with 3 different teams. He has trained for this in basically every aspect of football. We all know who his father is. I will just say that Elliott Wolf isn't going to give 2 craps about what ownership has to say. If he indeed has the final say, which is what he has told us that he does, he knows exactly what he's doing. He feels very confident in what he's doing. And I think that as long as him and Mayo are on the same page, which from what I understand, they are, Elliott's not going to care at all, because in any event, Nick, no matter what happens on Thursday night and in this draft for the New England Patriots, and I mean, do I think is there an outside chance that ownership weighs in? Like you somewhat suggested hypothetically. I guess that's possible, but I think it's much more likely that Elliott Wolf is left, him and Mayo, to make this pick, and Mayo understands that the decision that he makes with these draft picks will out, even if the worst happens here, that he's out after the draft, I don't know, whatever. those selections are going to live on forever and be tied to him. And he's 100% comfortable with that.
Last one regarding the ownership before we get to some of these rumors and stuff. Are you concerned that there are too many agendas or going to be too many agendas in the room on draft night?
A little bit. I mean, I do, wonder, and I still haven't gotten a straight answer on this, exactly what Macro's role is in this and going forward. But, the bottom line is Wolf and Mayo have been empowered and they're in charge. And, especially I feel really good about, Alonzo Highsmith being there for Elliott Wolf. Those guys are tied at the hip, have been close for a very long time. Both have been around the league. I think they're supremely confident in what they're doing, and they're going to stick to their board. They're going to stick to what they do. And so when you do that, when you have the knowledge of scouting and having experience with it, plus your methodology for doing it, which goes back to the Packers and how they changed the grading system, there's a confidence that comes from that, and I think that's where they are. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less in 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball and hockey's postseason, which is coming up. I can't wait. I know Nick is going to be freaking geeked up for all that stuff. That's for sure. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000 with basketball, hockey, baseball entries today on Prize Pick, America's #1 fantasy sports app. This week on Prize Picks, I'm selecting Jaylen Brown for more than 25 points, David Pastrnak for 2 goals or more, Tyler O'Neill, the big thumper, for 2+ home runs this week, and Kenley Jansen for 2 saves. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy at Prize Picks.
Let's get into some of the reporting now, Greg, about this #3 pick, some of the offers that have been made, maybe some of the offers that haven't been made. MassLive today, Mark Daniels wrote that the offers for #3 have been quote-unquote laughable, in that the Patriots are waiting for a quote-unquote serious offer. Meanwhile, Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network have reported that Washington has given zero indication that they are moving. Certainly seems like at this hour, Washington is sticking and picking. They're happy with 2. They're going to draft a quarterback at 2. However, Ian and Tom also mentioned that New England would move. They would move out of 3 if they got the right offer, but they haven't seen that offer on the table just yet. A lot of talk about the Patriots moving out. A lot of talk about the Patriots looking at possible deals. Greg, I read this. I read things like laughable, serious offer. It feels to me like the Patriots are now trying to put their foot on the neck of a team to force them to give as much as the Patriots want them to give. Is plan A, are we to believe that plan A is now moving out of #3?
I don't believe that. I think that plan A is stick and pick, whichever quarterback, Daniels or Maye, is there for them. If for some reason both of them are there, I think that Daniels is higher on their board than Maye is. And I think, to me, this is just part of Elliott Wolf primarily. Let's just say that he's very much enjoying that nobody has any idea what the Patriots are going to do as far as quarterback trading down. This is all by design to me. I think this is all misinformation that's out there. Like I said, I think it's going to come out after the draft that, I don't know, whether it was 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, what have you. It was probably right after the top 30 visits. So this would be, a couple weeks ago, I think, by the time we get to the draft, that I think that the Patriots knew exactly what they were going to do. And, it doesn't hurt anything to put things out there to see if a team gets stupid. I mean, you just never know. And, could the Raiders get absurdly stupid and throw Devontae Adams in there? The Vikings, Justin Jefferson, you never know. And I think that not knowing what the Patriots are doing at number 3, they're hoping that it drives other teams crazy to the point that they make an insane offer. And, maybe you at least have to consider it. And by the way, no, Felger, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, which knowing what you're going to do, but also picking up the phone and listening, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
It's so funny you bring that up, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you, is if you love the guy, do you just pick? Do you just take the pick and say, no, we love the guy and no offer is a good enough offer to turn down the opportunity to draft this young man? I think, to make it easy, yes, that's the easiest thing to do. And sometimes, at the beginning of this process, early stages, I looked at it and said, if you love them, pick them, don't overthink it. But there are details. There are details. There are things that happen. And if a team is so crazy, then you at least have to entertain it, which leads me to, let's talk crazy. Let's talk about the bag. Everybody's bringing up the bag. People define the bag differently, Greg. So let's run through a couple of scenarios. Let's start with Minnesota, since that is the hottest over the last few weeks as far as trade rumors go. Minnesota calls you, Greg. They offer you number 11, number 23, a 2025 first-round pick. If you're Elliott Wolf, is that enough?
No, it's not. I need more. Now, I don't think that the Vikings have a second-round pick in 2025.
I'll look that
up. I proposed this in my column on Sunday, like at least, looking at it, like the different scenarios. And I had 11, 23, 25 first, and a 25 third. Now,
just to jump in, the Vikings do not have a second or third round pick. So they go from 23 to 108.
Oh, okay. So 108, is that in the fourth round?
Yes.
Okay.
They have 2 fourth round picks. They have 108 and 129.
Okay. I think that, no, that's not even close. The only thing that along those same lines, let's just use Minnesota as an example. I would need some sort of player in that scenario, either Justin Jefferson or Darisaw tackle. I'm talking like I'm not moving unless it's stupid. And here's the other thing: I wouldn't love moving with the Vikings because, and here's why I'm somewhat open to moving. At least I had the door open a crack. Is if you can do what Chicago basically did. Like I'm looking for, the Bryce Young Chicago like deal where you're getting multiple first round picks and it ends up being the first pick in next year's draft. Now the Raiders, it's possible that if they get stupid and do something like that, I would consider it, because all of a sudden you'd have your own first round pick and you'd have theirs, and you're probably talking 2 top 10 picks next year. So as far as the Vikings, no, I need something. I need more than just the additional 2025 first round pick.
Yeah, and I'll say it one more time for the people in the back. Stop saying 3 first-round picks if you're including the pick swap. That irritates the hell out of me. Like,
yeah,
if you're trading 3, if you say 3 first-round picks, you do not include 11, because you're dropping from 3 to 11. You are taking that hit. It is a pick swap. To me, I want more than 11, 23 in next year's first. Absolutely want more than that. And if you could have a Darisaw, like you said, Greg, or a Justin Jefferson, then obviously that is a part of the conversation, because I think included in this conversation about the picks and what you do is you tell me how this all lines up, right? Like if you make the deal with Minnesota and they deal you, I don't know, Justin Jefferson and 23 and next year's first or whatever, Just throwing that up against the wall, folks. I haven't looked at the Rich Hill trade chart, so get off my back. So if you're going to make that kind of a deal, well, now, if you're the Patriots and you say to yourself, okay, well, we get Justin Jefferson. Could we draft Michael Penix at 23 or move up and draft Michael Penix, and still have a shot at getting a young tackle in the second round? And you walk out of this draft with essentially Michael Penix, Justin Jefferson, young left tackle, and a future first. Well, now Michael Penix makes more sense, because if you're plopping Michael Penix into this roster, even given the picks, if you drop Penix into this roster and you have a rookie wide receiver, a rookie left tackle, I don't think Penix makes as much sense under that scenario. But if you get a piece that's a veteran, proven, bona fide left tackle or wide receiver, he makes more sense in that kind of a situation. All right. They are sitting at 6. They have been rumored to enjoy themselves some Drake Maye. If Daniels goes 2 and Maye is sitting there and the Giants call you, Greg, they have the 6th pick, the 49th pick, and the 70th pick right now. So they have 3 top 70 picks. What do you need from the Giants to move from 3 to 6?
I would need their 2025 first. And by the way, just one correction. So I think you, on the Vikings pick, the 3rd round pick, I think you were looking at this year. So they have one away this year. I was talking about their 3rd rounder next year, because they don't have a 2nd. So yeah. I think I was just looking, I would need to, instead of 70 this year, I want their 1st round pick next year. And I just wanted to see if they have a 1st round pick. So
it'd be 49 in next year's. They have 49 in next year's 1st round pick. So a 2nd this year and a 1st next year. That makes sense.
Like I said, stupid.
I mean, it makes sense from our point of view. It might not make sense from the Giants' point of view, but if you're the Patriots, you go down to 6, and if you want a quarterback, you still have a chance at J.J. McCarthy. You still have a chance at Penix if you want to move down again. I think that's getting into silly season talk. But the one thing I want to make sure that I bring up, and I want to ask you, Greg, a lot of people kind of are just looking at this as quarterback versus quarterback, when that's not the case. And what I mean by that is, what Elliott Wolf in the front office has to decide is how much of a difference is there between the guy you can get at 3 versus the guy that you can get maybe a little bit later in the 1st round, plus the draft capital that you get. So what I mean by that is, if the Patriots move down to, if they trade 3 for, 23 and Justin Jefferson in the 1st next year, now you ask yourself the question, is Drake Maye better than Michael Penix, Justin Jefferson, and a 1st round pick next year? That's the conversation. It's not McCarthy versus Maye or Penix versus Maye. It's who can we get if we move down? What do we get out of that move? And then you compare that in totality against what you get at number 3. And I think some people miss that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that, a lot of those conversations, are legit. And here, to me, the biggest thing in a potential trade down, Nick, and I don't know how you feel about this, it's about, all right, what can that 1st round pick look like next year? Just what I was talking about, where, like, say the Patriots pass on a quarterback, they have Jacoby Brissett, say they're, middling, maybe 6-7 wins or something like that. And they're like, somewhere 10 to 15, it's that other 1st round pick that you might have, like, say from the Raiders or the Giants. The Giants could be asked this coming year. So all of a sudden, like, now I'm building up. I got my wide receiver. I got my tackle. Like, I'm building this roster, and now I have the ammunition to get whatever quarterback I want next year. And they do have more than preliminary evaluations on those guys right now. And, are we better off doing that? I don't think it's crazy to have that conversation, and I don't think it means that like you don't have conviction on the quarterback. Again, I think before we get too much off the rails, and we've talked about this, like I believe that the Patriots are pretty convicted on either taking Daniels or Maye at 3, whoever is there. And so I think a lot of this is just, talk, but it's part of the fun. So we're going to go through it.
We got to do what we got to do. It's draft week, baby. A lot of stuff out there. We got to let the people know. Vegas at 13. Here's how I feel. I said this yesterday on my podcast, Nick Cattle Show, if you want to check it out, by the way, on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Pods. So all of this Jayden Daniels stuff, like, the agent wasn't necessarily thrilled with the Washington setup during the visits.
Right.
And right after the combine, we heard from Phil Perry, and Perry said that some people, from what he had heard, some people around Jayden Daniels let it be known that they weren't thrilled with the idea of him playing in the Northeast. Jayden Daniels, his mother was very involved back in the Arizona State days, to the point where she was booking flights for recruits out in Arizona State, okay? Very involved. So her last name, I think, is Jackson. It's Jackson. It's not Daniels. So Mama Jackson.
Is it Regina Jackson?
So Mama Jackson. Here's my theory. Mama Jackson and some people are getting involved here because Mama Jackson wants her son to be closer to her out there on the West Coast. She's not thrilled after him playing at LSU with baby boy being away from her because she likes to be involved in his career and apparently had a blueprint, quote unquote, as it was reported, about what she would like to happen to her son's career. So again, very involved. Antonio Pierce, obviously, strong link with Daniels. I think a lot of the stuff we've heard about Daniels with Washington and even here to a lesser extent is Daniels' people, including Mama, trying to get things done to get Vegas up to a spot that could draft Daniels. So with all of that as the background, if you're the Patriots, do you consider going all the way down to 13, or is that just way too far?
Depending on the future bag and if there's a player, and like, look, I'll just say this straight out. I love Davante Adams. I don't want Davante Adams for this team. Like, he's 31 years old. I love him. He's still in the prime of his career, but I just watched for 2 years in Las Vegas a team without a quarterback and no real path, not really taking an aggressive path to get a quarterback, having Davante Adams and all the issues that came with that, which basically, you could say led to Josh McDaniels firing. That they went and got the wide receiver, and I love Davante. He's not a diva, but he's one of these guys that they stick a microphone. He didn't get so many passes, he answers it. And Mark Davis is talking to him, and what do you think? And don't go get the veteran wide receiver without having the quarterback. No, I'm not. That's. I'd contemplate it depending on the future bag, but no.
What if it's Davante Adams and Michael Penix? Penix at 13.
No, this roster, they are not ready for. I mean, by the time they're ready to contend, Davante's probably 32, 33, and he could be on the downside of his career. No, I'm not interested.
All right, some more stuff, some more scuttlebutt. Scout D on Twitter. I did not know who this person was until yesterday, but it's not some random Twitter account. And the reason why I say that is this Twitter account or X account, whichever you call it, terrible branding by Elon Musk, by the way, just terrible. I don't know why you would change Twitter, but hey. So Scout D is followed by Adam Schefter, has more than 9,000 followers and doesn't follow anybody. So if Adam Schefter follows this person, I do give this person some credence, whoever it is. And they tweeted out yesterday that the Patriots have had some unprecedented offers pretty much available to them, made available to them. This person does say that he believes or she believes the Patriots will still likely stay. Pete Schrager on Pat McAfee today said he is putting his name on Jayden Daniels to Washington. He feels that it will be Daniels number 2. We said earlier, all the reporting right now, Washington is happy at number 2. They're not moving. So that means Drake Maye is sitting there. And we've heard that Minnesota and the Giants specifically are interested in Drake Maye. Here's my question to you, Greg. If it was Drake Maye versus a move down with no second move figured out, so there's no going the full Monty. No full Monty is set up. So it'd be moving down, no second move figured out versus Drake Maye. What do? Do you take Drake Maye at 3, or do you make that move down with no guarantee that you could move back up?
No, I need the full Monty. I need to, and it could be, it could be a team like the Chargers. I think that the Patriots have always, their new GM, Ortiz, used to be in Baltimore. The Patriots have always had a good working relationship with the Ravens as far as trades and things like that. I think that the Patriots, I don't think Wolf is doing it unless he has the trade up, like at least sketched out.
All right, let's go through a lightning round here. Several questions for you. Greg, who is on top of the Patriots board right now? Is it Maye or is it Daniels?
Daniels.
Who's on top of your board?
Maye, slightly, just because of the build, the Northeast, playing in the elements. But I love Jayden Daniels too. Also, I mean, they're 2A, 2B for me. I flip flop like all the time. I just don't think. I think Daniels. Nick, you answer this for me. What do you think? What is Jayden Daniels' sort of elite trait or traits when people talk about him?
Oh, well, it's athleticism. First and foremost, they talk about his speed. And then I would say deep ball, outside deep ball, accuracy, and touch.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just don't think, from my evaluation of Jayden Daniels, I don't think his running is as elite and as special as people are making it out to be. I think in college it was. He's very good in a straight line, and we've sort of talked about this before, how he's somewhat like Kaepernick, just different body type. He's not very elusive in the pocket. Now, does he have plays where he does that? And there's a famous play where he spins around, throws a touchdown. Yeah, I understand. That's there, but and is there on film. But more often than not, like, he's not very elusive in the pocket, and a lot of his stuff comes on designed runs. A lot of it is sprint right option, and he just goes around the outside and sometimes he does make unbelievable cuts where he's breaking people's ankles. But I worry about whether his running style and play style translates to the speed of the NFL, the speed and size. I don't think it's going to be elite, and I think he's going to end up taking a lot of sacks. That's going to become an issue where I think Drake Maye, I think he has better athleticism in the pocket, escaping things like that, than actually Jayden Daniels does. And he has a stronger arm, and he has the potential to match him as far as deep ball accuracy and things like that. So that's why I have Maye slightly ahead.
I've got more lightning round questions for Greg, but first, this episode brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use that code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, check out Greg and Company over at BSJ. $50 for the year. Tremendous work at Boston Sports Journal. $50 for the year. Let's continue. The difference between Jayden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy.
For the Patriots?
For you, how much of a difference is there?
It's a really good question. They are just such different quarterbacks. Me, and I've been trying to get an answer for this. I think I might have mentioned it last, and I haven't gotten a good answer yet from my NFL sources, my personnel sources, where I've asked them, when was the last time a quarterback that can spin it as well as Michael Penix can, and taking all the other stuff out, age, injury, and stuff like that? When was the last time a guy came out of the colleges and could spin it, could just flat out throw the ball like Michael Penix did? When was the last time a guy like that busted? And nobody can really give me an answer. There's similarities. Like Chad Pennington threw a really nice ball in college and coming out, and early in his NFL career, then he had the arm issues and he became a different quarterback. But as far as pure passers, those guys don't bust. So to me, I think that Michael Penix is such a good thrower of the ball. He's elite and can just fire like tomorrow. You could plug him out there and there's, and I've heard this comparison, there's a little bit of Dan Marino like in him. Not the same, certainly, and looks different. Marino was a work of art throwing the football. But the result, how it comes out of Penix's hands, reminds me a little bit of Marino. Again, I'm not saying he's Dan Marino, please. But McCarthy is just different. He's more athletic ability. He's more the total package. He throws one-speed fastballs. He has to really torque his body and needs a lot of room to throw deep, similar to Mac Jones, but he's got more talent than Mac Jones. To me, now I'm going against. So I had McCarthy ahead of Penix slightly in my rankings, just because I think you can win with McCarthy, and I think that would appeal to some people, and I know it appeals to some people within the walls of the Patriots.
So would you think that the Patriots like McCarthy more than Penix, and if so, by how much?
I think so. I would say they would feel comfortable drafting McCarthy 6-13. I think they would be comfortable drafting Penix somewhere in the 20s.
Okay. All right, wide receiver question. A couple of reports over the last day or so out in the Bay Area would lead you to believe that Brandon Ayuk is available. Do we have a trade for a wide receiver, a vet wide receiver, before night 2? So before Friday night, do we have a trade for a veteran wide receiver?
I'll just say I hope not, because that would mean that they would be dealing one of their picks this year, and I am adamant against that. I think they need to stick and pick, if not maneuver the draft and trade down, trade up, trade back up into the first round for tackle or wide receiver, whoever's highest on their board that is lingering there within striking distance for them. I'll just say I hope not, because I don't want to use any of this year's picks. I'd rather wait until after the draft and use next year's
If they don't
picks.
move up into the late first round, or they don't have a tackle that they think is legitimate there at 34, I'm not against trading that 34th pick for a wide receiver. But to me, it has to be one of like a couple of guys. It's either going to be Ayuk or A.J. Brown. Those two guys, I would entertain trading 34. But again, it depends on what is there on the board. If there's this massive run of tackles, like a lot of people believe is going to happen, anywhere from, and I'm not talking about the top 3 or 4 guys. I'm talking about the massive run of tackles somewhere late in the teens through the 20s. If that's what happens and you don't have the ability to move up into the late first to get one of those guys like an Amarius Mims or Tyler Guyton or a Kingsley Suamataia, if you're incapable or just can't pull off a trade to get into that mix, then, I don't think there's a tackle that's worthwhile at 34. I would pivot and I would make that deal for an A.J. Brown or Brandon Ayuk. But I'm with you. I would lean towards a pick from next year, because you're sitting at the top of each of these rounds, and that's valuable. All right, $2 million questions. What do the Patriots do, Greg, on Thursday night?
Washington goes with Jayden Daniels at 2. The Patriots stick and pick and take Drake Maye.
What is Greg Bedard's worst case scenario on Thursday night?
The Patriots trade down from 3. They don't get a quarterback in the first round, and they end up drafting like Spencer Rattler in the 3rd round. I'm going to jump off the Tobin Bridge if something like that happens.
Well, Hopefully you don't do that. I care about you. I consider you a friend. Hopefully there's no jumping.
Thank you.
But there you go. So Greg's worst case scenario. We're going to find out what happens. Couple nights away. I'm not going to sleep much over the next couple of days because of anxiety and excitement. My head's racing. I'm sure many of you are going through the same things right now. He is Greg. I am Nick. So we haven't discussed this behind, the scenes here. But I would imagine we will do a podcast sometime on Friday following round one, correct? Okay,
yes.
So all of you can be prepared for Greg and my reaction on Friday after round one. Maybe it will be one pick. Maybe it will be two picks. Maybe something crazy will happen, be no picks. How about that scenario? Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Until then, he's Greg. I'm Nick. Goodbye.